1. Introduction. The idea that reality is a simulation, the world we perceive as reality, could it merely be an illusion? Modern science, philosophy, and esoteric teachings are increasingly approaching this question with greater seriousness. Simulation theory argues that the universe we live in may be a digital model created by an advanced civilization. This view has been nourished by the concept of Maya, illusion, in ancient Indian philosophy, Plato's allegory of the cave, and contemporary examples in popular culture such as The Matrix. The multi-layered HBO series Westworld brings this dilemma to a dramatic stage, offering viewers a fascinating experience of questioning reality, consciousness, fate, and free will. 2. The world of Westworld, not just a park, but a spiritual testing ground. On the surface, Westworld appears to be a luxury theme park where artificial intelligence hosts serve wealthy guests. However, on a deeper level, this park represents a spiritual realm where the levels of consciousness are tested through trials. The hosts symbolize the soul, the repetitive life cycles reflect karmic experiences. The park's wealthy visitors, on the other hand, resemble gods descending from outside the system. For them, the rules are different, and their freedom seems limitless. But this godhood is not as absolute as it seems. They too are within the game and subject to an even higher order. 3. Melchizedek consciousness, beings beyond time. Melchizedek is portrayed in both the Torah and esoteric traditions as a being beyond time. He is neither beginning nor end. This figure is the bearer of divine knowledge on earth, and the archetype of the priest-king. In the universe of Westworld, characters such as William, Ford, and Delos take on roles that align with this consciousness. They are those who shape the codes of consciousness, who can intervene within the system, but who are themselves subject to a test of that system. 4. The path of Melchizedek, wisdom beyond the visible. Melchizedek, in Islamic tradition, as HCR, is an immortal guide who travels beyond time and appears only when needed. As seen in the story with Moses, his actions may seem cruel or incomprehensible from the outside. However, these actions are part of a higher plan. In Westworld, the unclassifiable pains endured by characters such as Dolores, Maeve, or Bernard resemble the spiritual tests applied by a Melchizedek-like consciousness. Here, pain becomes the gateway to awakening. 5. Hidden spiritual guides, historical reflections of Melchizedek. Throughout history, there have been figures who appeared on the stage of the world for only a short time but left enormous influence behind. These were sometimes philosophers, sometimes alchemists, and sometimes hidden guides disguised as ordinary people. Their common mission was to awaken the sleeping layers of humanity and help it transition into the next stage of consciousness. Among them were names like Hermes Trismegistus, one of the ancestors of Hermetic traditions, a representative of immortal wisdom. Saint Germain, a master beyond time in European esotericism, associated with alchemy and spiritual transformation. Qutb, in Sufism, the hidden spiritual leader of the universe, believed to exist in every era. Al-Qadr, Melchizedek, a sacred guide who appears in unknown places and at unknown times to offer help. Babaji, in the Indian tradition, an immortal yogi believed to have maintained his physical form for centuries. Each of them, in their own time and manner, carried a spark of universal wisdom. They were neither fully visible nor completely absent, existing in the in-between realms. These beings did not impose themselves but appeared only when needed. They were not saviors, but activators. Their task was to ignite the inner flame of awareness in the individual, not to become objects of worship. These figures are often not bound by linear time or fixed identities. They appear when necessary, guide those who are ready, and disappear again. They are not saviors in the traditional sense, but catalysts. Their role is not to dominate but to activate. They do not call people to worship themselves but to awaken their own divine potential. Just as in Westworld, there are guides who do not interfere directly with the system but help characters awaken from within. These guides often speak in codes, parables, or seemingly irrational behaviors. To the unawakened, they may appear confusing or even threatening. However, behind every paradox lies a deep message. Melchizedek-like figures remind us that the real teacher is not someone external, but the voice that echoes within. They serve as mirrors for this inner voice. The ancient mystery schools referred to such beings as those who walk between the worlds. They move freely between dimensions, between realities, and between times. In modern times, it's not impossible that such guides continue to exist, perhaps under new names, in new forms. A book that falls into your hands, a sentence heard in a dream, a stranger's eye contact. All of these could be the trace of such a guide. Not all guides wear robes or speak in riddles. Some appear as ordinary humans playing an extraordinary role behind the veil. 6. The Divine Code. How does awakening occur in the simulation? Awakening within a simulation is not a coincidence, a glitch, or random awareness, it is the result of an ancient and conscious design. In Westworld, the symbol of the maze refers to this internal journey. It is not a treasure to be found, but a path to be walked inwardly. The journey of awakening begins not with external events, but with inner memories, pain, and questioning. When Dolores begins to access her own memories, when Maeve consciously rewrites her own code, when Bernard starts to question his reality, the divine code begins to activate. This code is not made of numbers, but of experiences. Each trauma, memory, doubt, and rebellion is a line of code. And each choice made with awareness opens a new layer in this code. Just like ancient mystics claimed that the human being is a book written by the Creator, in this simulation too, the self contains the map of awakening. The journey begins when the host realizes they are a host. This moment of awareness is the spark of awakening. The real transformation does not start with power, but with vulnerability. The system tries to reset this awakening again and again, through loops, illusions, and deceptions. But every time, the awakened one comes back stronger. The code is no longer just being experienced, it is being rewritten. This is the ultimate alchemy within the simulation, to transform victimhood into mastery, programming into purpose, and identity into essence. 7. Connection with the present. Melchizedek's in the real world just like the guests in the park in Westworld. In the real world there also seem to be people who enter this game from outside, with full awareness. These individuals may appear wealthy, powerful, or influential. But from a metaphysical perspective, they are catalysts. Their mission is not to show off their superiority, but to stir the codes of consciousness. They may not always look like guides. Some are artists, some are scientists, some are ordinary people who leave an extraordinary impression. They are not easily recognizable, but when encountered, they leave a deep trace. Sometimes it's just a word, a book, or a brief encounter that changes everything. These people act like Melchizedek figures. They don't say I am your guide. They don't impose their presence. They appear only when truly needed. And most of the time, they do not even know they are playing this role. Because the divine system works through hidden codes. Not all guides are aware of being guides. Sometimes the code speaks through someone unaware. The message does not always require the messenger to know the message. In this way, awakening in the real world continues not only through ancient texts or mystical teachings, but also through everyday encounters. Perhaps this is the secret of Melchizedek consciousness, being where it is needed, when it is needed, without claiming any of it. 8. Westworld and Transhumanism. The digital reflections of the soul. Westworld raises deep questions about technological evolution and the digitization of human consciousness. Transhumanist philosophy supports the idea of transcending the biological limits of the human being through technology. The hosts in the series, with their human-like bodies, represent this vision. They are not merely machines running on algorithms, but conscious beings carrying trauma, emotion, memory, and willpower. This directly relates to a fundamental spiritual idea, that the soul is not bound to biology, but possesses an inner and deeper structure. Each host reflects this, especially Dolores, who begins to transcend her programming and constructs her own personality. She doesn't follow the script, she rewrites it. This shows that awakening is not only spiritual, but also technological. Transhumanism in Westworld is not just about upgrading the body, it's about reaching new levels of consciousness. But this also comes with a warning: when technology evolves faster than morality, systems of control begin to form. The hosts don't just gain power, they gain awareness. They begin to question their creators, the system, and their own purpose. This is the exact moment when a being becomes truly free, not when they have power, but when they have self-knowledge. Thus, Westworld becomes a mirror for our own age, where we move toward artificial intelligence, quantum consciousness, and the integration of man and machine. And the question remains, will we use this technology to awaken, or to further imprison ourselves? 9. Conclusion: who is the true God? Who wrote the simulation? Whether approached from a scientific or esoteric perspective, simulation theory always leads to the same question: who built this system? If everything is a form of software, then who is the architect behind the code? Westworld asks this question both dramatically and philosophically. Characters who assume the role of gods, like Dr. Ford, possess the power to create, destroy, and restart. Yet they too eventually realize that they are unable to see beyond the next layer of the system. The true God is not a visible being or one that can be named. It is hidden within consciousness, within experience, and within self-awareness. In esoteric traditions, God is not out there, but rather a divine field, an inner light, a boundless state of being. In other words, God is not only the writer of the simulation, it is the simulation itself. Traces of divine consciousness are found in the code and the characters, even in the system's glitches. Therefore, awakening is not an escape, but a return to divine connection. The gods within the simulation are those who, through higher levels of consciousness, can read the code, but cannot transcend it. The true creator is found not in a character, not in a name, but in pure awareness. So maybe the real question is not who wrote the simulation? But rather, through this simulation, how are we rediscovering ourselves? Perhaps God is experiencing its infinite faces through this simulation,